What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It's Wednesday morning. Apologies for no videos in the last couple of days. I've been traveling back from Riyadh. It's been interesting. So I wanted to put out a video today that was sort of like my general kind of like, it's going to be a multi-purpose video. I want to very quickly kind of describe my trip and the experience, and then I want to cover some of the org news. I'll get to player and kind of player news more as more like firm stuff comes out about that. But for the topic of this video, I want to talk about EWC, talk about just quickly some of the results out of that, and then some of the org news that broke overnight. All right, so the trip, I'd heard a lot about, former people I worked with at Esports Engine, people that had gone to prior weeks of EWC, like kind of what the vibe would be like. And our trip to EWC actually came together pretty late, about 2 weeks before the trip. Shout out to Eric Anderson. He kind of helped put together sort of with the EWC Foundation this trip where, I would go, the Breaking Point guys would go because Sam, Chris, and Pat and Tommy really couldn't make the travel work. So really shout out to Eric for making the trip happen. And I thought it was a pretty interesting trip. Riyadh's sort of an interesting place. It definitely feels like it's, part of a developing nation. There's a lot of cranes, a lot of stuff being built, a lot of mega projects, a lot of smaller developments, districts being built, new hotels. The boulevard, which is where the event's going on, has a lot of construction. Like it still feels like very much a city that's kind of trying to build towards, I think, really tourism. And that was very interesting as the people in the city were very nice. Whether we were at the hotel or restaurants or at the boulevard or at the airport, like generally people were very nice. And I know that there's a lot of conversation we had about, and I'm not, going to shy away from sort of the other kind of connotations of what's going on in the country, the politics, kind of how they treat certain demographics and genders. But it felt like in Riyadh, it was a little bit more progressive. I had heard, obviously if you go to different parts of the country, that feels different, but in Riyadh, it definitely felt a little bit more like kind of liberal. I would say the venue, and again, I'm gonna have more thoughts kind of in like future streams and videos, but the venue was super cool. It has a very festival atmosphere, which I don't think was in the marketing internationally, but if you like actually were in Riyadh, you saw kind of the ads, like they advertised as a gaming festival. There's all this stuff going on, activations, VR, like all this other stuff that's going on at the boulevard that was great for young people, for families. So when you went to the event, there were a lot of people attending and watching the matches. There were also a lot of people like going to the other stuff that's going on. And that never really again, it was part of the international advertisement because I don't think they were expecting people to fly 20 hours from NA to Riyadh to experience that. For the local people in Riyadh and in Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries, like a lot of the people came for that. And you saw a lot of families and young kids there, which I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't expect that at all. So yeah, I think I'll talk a lot more about the experience, but shout out to the EWC Foundation. We had a great spot. The phase booth, as you guys saw, everything we needed, anything, shuttles, whatever, they were very helpful. Quick thoughts on the kind of results of the event. I think we are ending now into a really interesting position in Black Ops 6 where Optic and FaZe are the top two teams. FaZe obviously really needed this run. I think there were a lot of questions about their team going into the event. I think they answered a bunch of them, especially in my eyes, BZ and Cell, who I thought were the two players under the microscope. They both played very well at the tournament, and they were able to beat LA Thieves in the finals. They also beat Optic. I think for Toronto and New York, a lot of questions after this event because neither team won the last two events, what they want to do going forward. And I think for the rest of sort of the bottom eight, Thieves really, I think, kind of sit in the best position, followed by Vancouver as far as teams I think really have a chance to maybe take the next step up next season based on the results, but they can also swing the other way. As for everybody else, well, a mix of different types of placings. Some of those teams got upset by amateur teams, and got dead less in a tournament like Miami, and I think a lot of questions about what they're going forward. And then other teams maybe got deeper, but now there are org questions, and we're going to get to them in a second about who may be running those spots going forward. So I thought EWC was a great tournament. There's a lot I would have improved, and I'll talk about that in future videos and streams, but I had a great time. Anyway, with all that being said, let's get into some of the news I want to cover in this video. All right, so here was the news that broke overnight. I actually wasn't awake when this came out at like 12:37. I'll be honest, I got home last night and ordered food and then passed out because my internet was down. So this news broken by Hope, who, if you follow the COD scene, is a big leaker when it comes to normally game, kind of leaks and all that stuff. Rarely have I ever seen him get into esports, but here we go. He's making his first foray into that. I know he's always kind of been following CDL for a while. Exclusive, Fnatic and Gen.G are returning the Call of Duty competitive scene with the Black Ops 6 to replace Carolina Royal Ravens and the Los Angeles Guerrillas. So right now, assuming that this happens, this also joins the sort of Team Falcons news that Breaking Point released, and we'll get to that in a second. It would seem at least three orgs might be three new orgs might be coming in, and then Ghost also put this that TSM might also be coming potentially doing a lot of work, so maybe four. All right, so let's talk about this, and I'll get to Falcons in a second. So Ravens and LAG getting out, really not a surprise. Neither entity really seemed like they were in a position to really be here long term. LAG's one's more obvious than the Ravens. And so having Fnatic and Gen.G come in, who, if you are a long-term Call of Duty follower, someone who's watched since the early days of COD, pre-CDL, even pre-MLG, like Fnatic has been an org that's been flirting with the scene for a very long time. It's been in, been out, been in, been out. And Gen.G were very much in sort of at the tail end of the MLG era. So like both of those organizations who are pretty big in their own regions, right? Fnatic, mostly European based. Gen.G did a lot of NA esports to start with. I think know that they've made a lot more forays recently into sort of the Asian market. Interesting to see them come in and curious what kind of rosters. So the way that Hope phrased this, it sounds like this is a done deal. I haven't heard or confirmed from my end if it's done, but it seems like those two will be coming in. And I'm very curious on the timing of that because those rosters really theoretically couldn't come together until the deals are done. Also interesting at the bottom here is that Boston Breach will be running it back. So I'll kind of dive into the Boston news if I can get more info on it, because it seems like a very fluid situation. And then the TSM thing, this one's kind of interesting. I've heard TSM's name sort of floating around the ether of orgs that have met with some of the orgs who might be selling their spot, Vegas, Carolina, LAG, stuff like that. TSM in a weird spot as an organization, right? The FTX deal, if you've been following kind of crypto and what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried, TSM was very much had a lot of eggs in the FTX basket. They had a big, huge deal with them, and obviously that fell apart and had huge economic implications for their org, and they've subsequently downsized significantly. It'd be cool to see TSM come in. Their last stint in COD was in Black Ops 3, and they didn't exactly pick up the right people, so we'll see if this happens. It'd be cool to have their brand in. I like their branding, but this one, for my senses, maybe a long shot. We'll see. And then let's talk about this one, because I think a lot of people are running with this one on the Falcons news, but I think it's interesting. So Breaking Point tweeted this. This was while I was traveling on Monday. Like almost like, bro, the funniest part is about this is like we were literally, I was on a flight to Amsterdam, and it was full of like COD people were on the flight, and all this news, like the roster news and other stuff that was breaking down like while we were all mid-flight when this all came out. So that was pretty funny. Breaking: Falcons expected to replace Vegas Legion next season. So expected doesn't mean it's confirmed, means it's pretty likely, but obviously things could break down at the 11th hour. Legion as an organization will no longer exist. Players and staff have been told. So I assume that this is coming out on the Breaking Point side because players and staff have heard that Falcons might be replacing the spot. They don't have it like source on the business side. So my thing with, again, Hope and the Breaking Point stuff here is like they are kind of hedging. These are good, generally reliable sources, but they're not an SBJ. It's not a Kevin Hit. It's not a James Fudge type situation. People that are like more work for trade publications. And I would say those are like your tier one sources. This is more tier two, but they're very reliable. So I think a lot of conjectures kind of come in on like, oh, if Falcons replace Vegas, like they're going to spend, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. So I think there's a big question about that. I don't think it's really going to be answered until Falcons confirms the move and they really kind of communicate publicly what they want to do. Like in other esports, what they have done is they have picked up top teams, especially in the mobile scene, but a lot of them have been free agents. They really haven't. I think Rocket League and CS are maybe the only games where they really went to the mat on buyouts. I think salary structure, they've been paying, from what I understand, above market rates, but nothing like psychotic or crazy. So like this weird conjecture in the scene that they're going to go sign Shotzi and Dashi and Abizi and Simp and Celium for $1 million contracts, Hydra, Scrap. Like, I just don't think they're going to do that. They have a lot of different ways that they could do this. This was kind of my thoughts. I sort of tweeted it live when it came out. Like, I think the path for them is, first off, they need to bring a body, Xnid, and them over to NA and like really get them NA Challengers experience. I watched them play a lot at the event, and like those guys are talented, but I just don't think they have the sauce yet, the development sauce to really kind of really take the next step to a pro scene, like actually be really good. So I think getting them NA Challengers could really help. I think the best path for Falcons is to kind of make a mixed team, see what kind of top players they can get, and then have that academy team with Xnid in them, and then they can kind of make a lot of roster moves based on that going forward. Obviously, they could just bring Xnid and them over and then make them that team in the CDL, which would be interesting. I think the Falcons thing, and kind of my sense on it, is we just don't really know a lot here. We don't know if this move is going to happen. And if it does happen, we don't know what they're going to do. And I think the fantasy Candyland thing that people are tweeting about of them like making a super team, yeah, they could try and buy out Scrap and Hydra, who are in more unstable, or well, I wouldn't say unstable situation, but New York and Toronto have a lot of work to do to catch up to Optic and FaZe. They can go that route and then build a team around them. I don't know how likely that is, so we'll lock into that. I'll report kind of more news as I get it. So yeah, it's kind of like my overall thoughts. I'm going to release kind of more videos and streams over the next couple of days. It might be a little bit slow this weekend, but I think we're going to really ramp up next week on off-season content as sort of news comes out about the orgs around the teams. So this is going to look like a really interesting roster mania because you've got this, obviously a lot of roster movement, but you also got a lot of org movement, and it might slow things down a bit as stuff gets confirmed. So this might be an interesting roster mania. Make sure you lock in the channel for more news. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of these news. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.